Former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown has worked and known with a lot of mayors, and he also helped select Ed Lee for the job. Melissa and I asked him to comment on Mayor Ed Lee and his legacy.
Very high. He was the personification of a bureaucrat. He was also the personification of what you should not be if you want to run for office, because that was not what he wanted to do. That was not his skill set. And Phil, he also did not have the killer instinct and the horror that goes with that if you're a real politician.
I think people forget sometimes, too, that when he came in, we remember the City Hall was really divided. The Board of Supervisors hated Mayor Newsom, who hated them right back.
There was a recession going on. We were worried about the economic future of the city. He was not inheriting a house in order.
Exactly.
Well, yes and no, because it was at the end of the crisis. He came in January 2011 as Mr. Newsom moved off. He came in at exactly the time that the progressives were seriously talking about giving a tax break to the people who you wanted to move up here from Silicon Valley. Ed Lee didn't have to orchestrate any of that.
The tax break.
It all just happened. And just as it had been in incubation for a period of time under Newsom, he got the benefit of that. And believe me, that was the thing that propelled his administration till this day.
You were instrumental, as were a couple of other people, in selecting Ed Lee, who was then the city administrator, a bureaucrat. Why? Why did you select Ed Lee to be the stand-in for Newsom and then turn around and talk him into running? Was that all part of a master plan?
Well, at all times, we were about, many of us were about, trying to make sure that the Asian community that had moved somewhere between 30 and 35% of the population would get appropriate representation. And we were of the opinion that we had to have an Asian to do that following Newsom. There was no other Asian.
And you were also intent on continuing the legacy of Willie Brown and Gavin Newsom.
Well, that was not our discussed motivation. We really were about trying to make sure we got somebody who could actually run the city. And Ed Lee was the kind of guy that you would hire to run the city. He had been hired to be the city administrator because he had those skills. Under the city administrator, everything operates there except police and fire.
Question. The skill set that he had as being the friendly, the nice guy, Melissa,
collaborator.
The collaborator.
He got grief for it sometimes.
Exactly. Did it work with the homeless, with the police, with the traffic, with the construction? He was seen by some as someone who was sort of cast in the wind as opposed to commanding it.
Well, the city, obviously, once you get over the first week of your swearing in, you are then subject to being criticized. And Ed Lee commenced to receive criticism every day thereafter. If you recall, there was a whole host of people that speculated they should run against him, including Mark Leno for re-election, but they backed off. Because when the polls showed that people didn't really dislike Ed Lee, that smile and that demeanor and that you couldn't get angry with him enough to make it possible to get rid of him.
You know, we never got the impression that he was looking to run for higher office, like
This
so
was the
many
one.
other people.
Right, exactly.
So he was really focused on the job and really wasn't that concerned with, you know, what people were saying, for example, sometimes.
No, he never had his, he was never looking over your shoulder at the next job he was going to be making, which is rare in politics. Also, he was a true believer in many of the programs and platforms that he espoused. And over all of his decisions, whether you agreed with them or not, I never found any hint that he was doing it other than for what he thought was right. You might disagree with Ed Lee, but you could not question why he was doing what he was doing. And San Francisco City Hall will go dark for the next few weeks, but the intrigue is not going to stop, and that's why Melissa and I asked former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, what's going on behind the scenes right now?
Well, actually, Phil, the intrigue started at the SF General Hospital on Tuesday morning, shortly after 1:30.
That quickly?
The dialogue and the people who were there were already talking about what should happen or what shouldn't happen. And it was interesting because on the floor where the mayor was in the hospital was London Breed and 2 or 3 other people.
She's the acting mayor.
In the lobby area where people are there was Aaron Peskin, Jane Kim.
Board supervisors.
That's right, and Norman Yee. So suddenly you had a difference, and that clearly reflected how things were going to be for the next 2 years.
So now everyone's just trying to count to 6, right? Who can get those 6 board votes so that they can serve as
interim mayor
until, until the June election.
And this time, it's a June election. We were going to have a mayor's race in 2019. In effect, that race has moved forward from being an 18-month run to a 5-month sprint.
Right, it's so quick. Everyone has to raise money. You have to file your papers. You have to find your backers, all while the Christmas holiday is happening and City Hall is dark.
And interestingly enough, there was only one person who was already declared a candidate for 2019.
Former State Senator Mark Leno.
That is correct. And he had been lining up, people supporting him.
And raising money.
How long do you think?
Raising a lot of money. All that is gone. All that is gone. The money is there.
Oh, yeah, the money's still there.
Yeah, but
well,
the people are already
brings us
calling in and saying,
that
hey,
brings us to
I endorsed you for 19. I didn't endorse you
That brings
under
us
the
to the next
circumstances.
occasion. The circumstances are that Board of Supervisors President London Breed is now the acting mayor, and with it comes an incumbency. While other people are interested in the job, and San Francisco is notorious for its backroom politics, does she stay on? Do you think the board is going to allow her to stay on as acting or interim mayor, or are they going to go for a neutral person?
No, I sure hope so. You understand that she's the second woman, literally, in the history of San Francisco. She's the second African-American. She's 42, 43, going on 43 years of age. She's clearly from the sticks, so to speak, from the other side of the tracks. We've never had that in San Francisco, and she is competent. So there isn't any reason why there shouldn't be London
She's
Breed.
also a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Let's go right to it.
I think progressives would say there are lots of reasons.
Reasons.
Well, and here's the thing. Now that she's both acting mayor and the president of the Board of Supervisors, folks at the board, if they can't get 6 votes for someone else, may say, you know what, at least give us the president of the Board of Supervisors back. We'll make you interim mayor, so at least one of us maybe could take over as the president of the board, because she would have to resign at the board if she were actually elected interim mayor.
Your lawyer skills demonstrate themselves quite often. You've just given London the method by which she could exist for the next 2.5 years. I'll tell her.
Well, compliments to you on that, all right? I'll pass it on as well when she joins us.
Right, she's right over there, so you're welcome.
It is interesting in this past week. San Francisco has shown its calm and its resolve, and I think a lot of that credit goes to Ed Lee. Because
That's right.
whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him, his presence, his personality had a calming effect on the city, and right now it's made it for a very sort of easy move.
That's right. His collaborative style, I think, is something that whoever succeeds him is going to be under some amount of pressure to continue to do, because it seemed to make things to make the atmosphere better in City Hall.
Right. Left a not an agreement, but a calm and united city.